Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here and welcome to this week's episode of The Knife Guy. If you are new to my channel, you just came out of some weird corner of the internet and you have no idea where you are or who I am, I'm a knife guy, knife user, knife collector, knife enjoyer of many sorts. We are all, assuming if you're watching this video, knife guys and knife gals in this super weird EDC and knife related world. And we all go down our own unique paths, but oftentimes those paths intersect and we experience a lot of the same stuff. What I like to do in this series is lay out knives that are generally either mine or some of my viewers, just knives that have been lent to me. In this case, these are all mine. Pick them up, flip them, in this case, deploy them. Just sort of mess around with them while I talk about some of these topics on this hopefully beautiful Sunday morning, afternoon, or evening. Give you guys something to watch or listen to. That's what I usually say, isn't it? What are we talking about today? So I laid out specific knives. These are all mine. And each of these knives has something in common. And what that is that, in my opinion, they are overpriced. All of them. The Hinderer, yeah, even the XM24, right? So what we have here, just so everybody knows, most of you guys watching are know, the Strider Medford built, but Strider 3/4 AR, the Rockstead Higo 2, the Microtech Scarab 2, we have the Hinderer XM24, excuse me, let me straighten these out here. We have the Microtech Combat Troodon. In this case, it's a Hellhound blade. And then we have the Spyderco Shaman. So I have knives that, in my collection currently, I have knives that range anywhere from about $30 all the way up to $1,500. And within that range, there are knives that are more or less expensive that I think are absolutely hitting the mark. And then there are knives that I own anyway, and these are some of the best examples in my collection that I'm, even at the time of, well, not necessarily with the Shaman, and we'll talk about that, but even at the time of purchasing them, I'm like, this is too much money, but I just really want it. And it's funny how often that affects me. I think, before I did the channel and currently it's the same idea. Every time you buy a knife, right? A lot of us do the same thing. If you don't watch YouTube videos, you look up information online, you come over the specs and you compare it, right? But you've budgeted, you've set aside a certain amount of money that you're looking for something that gives off that sense of value in this price range. And you do as much research as possible and you sort of line things up with, sorry, apparently my neighbor is mowing the side of my house right now. Can you hear that? Great. Anyways, it's much louder for me than it is for you guys, I'm sure, but it's very distracting. Anyways, so yeah, you budget, right? You do your research. Maybe you watch some videos. Maybe you go to blade forums, right? Everybody's got their own thing, and you kind of line up what you're looking for, and you dial it in, and you look at something, and the hope is that you're gonna buy it, and you're gonna get it, and you're gonna immediately feel that sense of value. And then you're going to love it forever. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you go ahead and pay for it and you get it and you're like, wow, this does not feel like what I spent. Another scenario, I think this happens to me. I'm not going to speak for you guys, but I think it happens to people more than they care to admit. We look at something and you just really want it. You look at the price and go, oh my God, WTF. That is so unbelievably expensive, and it really just seems right here, overpriced, right? And then you just kind of you back off from it for a little bit, and then you go back and you keep looking at pictures and you keep looking at videos. You go back and watch them, and you keep looking for justification to make that purchase. You try to almost create targets. If the target represents extra, just synthetic made up elements of value, you try to hit those targets and you're like, yeah, okay, now I can just, and then you go ahead and buy it, right? So I've gotten to this point where with certain knives, I'll look at them and go, that's just too much money. Like for what that is, it's too expensive. And logical people, and I know that many people who are watching right now are plenty logical people, will go, if the value's not there for me, then I will not overspend on it, and I follow that rule, right? I have a part of my brain that doesn't necessarily, draw the line there. I can recognize when something is a little bit overpriced or dramatically overpriced, and then if I just decide that the want is greater than needing to meet that sense of value, I will go ahead and buy it anyway. And then, funny enough, some knives, especially the knives that stick around in my collection, bring me so much joy that I sort of forget, because so much time passes since when, I went ahead and paid for it. The sting of paying for it will be there. But eventually so much time passes that you're like, well, I have it, and the sting of paying for it is gone, so I'm just free to enjoy it. That is the case with every single one of these knives sitting out on the table right now. If you want to know what I honestly think, the Rockstead Higo 2 is a $1,500 knife. I've said this many times. I have no idea how the heck truthfully, even the frame lock version that's $250 less, that one seems a bit high. They're really, really nice knives. It's just really hard for me to identify exactly what it is that makes this so much more expensive than, say, a Shirogorov, which usually hit that mark around the $800 to $1,000 mark. So, number one, I can't figure out why the heck the frame lock version of it costs a whopping $1,250, and I certainly can't figure out why. And I said this in the review the first time, and then when I unboxed it, right? I can't figure out why this thing is $250 more than the frame lock version. So that one is wildly. The more I have it, especially now that I just carry and use it as a tool, I love it. It's definitely an expensive knife. Had they wanted let's say they wanted $1,000 to $1,100, and I think maybe the reason I think that is because the other really expensive knife in my collection is the Quantum, and they're built differently. But the overall presentation and feeling of quality, right? It's different categories, but it's there at around the same price point as the Quantum. So maybe $1,100 would have made more sense to me at a maximum. $1,500, I obviously way overspent on it. But I've gotten enough joy out of it where I'm like, ouch, but okay, that's not necessarily a healthy way to look at things, but that's just what's happened. The Strider 3/4 AR, I also love this knife and carry and use it a lot. And there's definitely a lot of quality here that makes me happy. But it's a different build than something like, for example, this is a $600 knife. What else is a $600 knife right now that I think hits the mark really well? The Koenig Arius. Those definitely do not feel the same, right? Not even close. And even considering that there are, quality comes in many, many different forms, this just doesn't feel like a $600 knife. It feels more like a $500 knife. That's kind of where my mind is at. Microtech knives, I've kind of always felt this way. And, the Scarab 2, I just love how it looks. I love the big wide firing button. I love that it's such a huge tanky OTF that fires really hard. I just really wanted to own it. What are these, $525 to $550? No, I don't get that at all, right? For me, it's like it's funny that I'm defining where I think the price should be, and then I'm also saying that I went ahead and bought it, knowing that I think that it's too much money. So it's like, is that actually where my sense of value is? Where is it? If I was going to sort of map it out and try to explain it on paper, where is it? It's like, it's almost like my brain is divided into two separate territories. It's just the whole sort of caveman, want now, buy now, right? And then the logical part of me that's like, but that's too, by your own standards, that's too much money for that thing, right? I can't afford to just fork over however much money I want for an object, right? I think a lot of people might point out, well, that's the way that it is, for people who have excess disposable income, right? So then they're just like, well, whatever, I just want it. It's not the case for me. I still have to sell things. I still have to budget, right? I cannot just fork over, right? So, and I think it's from handling so many things. I'm handling things all the time. It's always in my face. When I know that I want something, I know that I just want it. And it's just one of those, like, you got to bite the bullet, right? Microtech Scarab 2, I don't know. I think I would have been much more comfortable at around the same price as like a Hinderer XM18, about $425. So it's, that one feels about 100 over if I'm being brutal. I'm being very brutal here with this stuff. But, sometimes after having it for a long time, it's easier in hindsight to go back and go, well, it's just, it's hard because you have a different emotional response from the first time that you see it to the first time that you handle it. Maybe the first time that you own it is the first time that you handle it, right? And then after having owned it and experienced it for months, right? The XM24, I love the XM24. I've always been open and honest about the 24 being definitely the most overpriced Hinderer, right? It's $200 more than or it's $175 more than an XM18 3.5 inch or XM18 3 inch. The XM18 3.5 inch, I think, is right on the money, right? I don't have a problem with them pricing those things anywhere from $425 to $500, depending on the variant, right? I think that makes sense to me. Why the XM24 is another $175, I don't know. Because it's bigger? I'd be breaking my own rules if I said that I understood, oh, it's just bigger. It's, costs more money. Yeah, more materials, certainly, but $175, I don't know. Plus the titanium scale. This is an $800 Hinderer. I bought it because I've got that part of my brain that can't say no to a Hinderer, right? I can say no to the customs. I don't want a custom Hinderer bad enough to want to spend well over $1,000 on it, or $2,000 in some cases. No. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the seed for Hinderer knives was planted partially with the XM24, and the memory of it being, when I first got into it or first noticed them, they were just as unavailable, arguably more unavailable than they are right now. So the XM24, which I knew after learning they made less of, I was like, that's even more ridiculous. So my sense of value with Hinderer knives is all sorts of messed up because the obsession with them, right? And then having that reaffirmation after buying a few, right? So, but I can't help but, after having handled stuff, again, being able to identify like, okay, well, these elements are similar to this and this price point, right? So being able to calculate it and understand it and put it out on paper and come at it logically, yeah, like I can do that. But then that part of my brain that's like, but I still want it. So I end up with stuff like this, right? It's a gift from my wife. So it's like, I kind of paid for this, but I kind of didn't, but I kind of did, right? The Combat Troodon Hellhound. The Signature Series is ever more confusing to me. I was under the impression for a long time that all Signature Series Microtech knives were hand-ground blades. And I'm still kind of not 100% sure. I can't find actual wording. I can't find anything. It doesn't mean it's not out there. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've been wrong this whole time. I don't know. But that was always like keeping this, because this is a $600 knife. At one point, there were a few retailers had them listed, this exact knife for $650. I think if you find a Hellhound blade, which is only part of the Signature Series, and what is the Signature Series? It's just a fancier presentation of Microtech knife. I'm not really sure. I don't know. I can't find exact. There's like special, the certain materials and certain grinds you can only find in the Signature Series, and then that series are the same knives and they just cost more money. The Hellhound blade certainly has a little bit more going on, right? But we're looking at 204P, the same type of aluminum, and then just some different laser work on the aluminum. This is a nice knife. OTF, American manufacturing. But again, it's like the Combat Troodon and the Scarab 2 feel like, even the standard version of the Combat Troodon is like $480 to $500. They feel like $400 to $425 knives, right? Spyderco Shaman, when it first came out, I've said this a billion times. What were they? $155? Yeah, sign me up. I'll buy 10 Shamans, right? And I can't really, no, I can't. I don't want to buy 10 Shamans. But for $155, that made a lot of sense. Honestly, they bumped it to They bumped it from 155 to, I think, 165 briefly, and then 185. I bought mine at 185, thinking, it's a bit high, but okay, right? Now they're 200 and something. Whoa. 155 to $165. Mine's, I know you guys are wondering, why is it green? It's because I pulled the River's Edge Cutlery Shaman scales off of that one and put because it's got black scales on it now, so, and I'm never going to sell the thing, so, and this is my original Shaman, so I was like, whatever, I'll put the green scales on it. But anyways, yeah, it's overpriced, right? And I knew that still, like I was like 185. And if you go back to that unboxing, that was a long time ago. It was like 3 years ago. I said with the Shaman, I was like, what's the deal with the Shaman? It's just like a different, so it's like a Manix 2 and a PM2 mixed together, and it's got the compression lock, and it looks boring. And then when I unboxed it and handled it, you can watch the first time that I ever handled the Shaman, and I just lost it immediately. And all of a sudden, that whole, is this overpriced, is it not, it just went completely out the window because of the connection that I made with it, right? That is the case with all of this stuff. Each of these knives had such a powerful connection. I took a risk, I rolled the dice, right? Bit the bullet and just was like, ow, ow, it stings to have sold things out of my collection, right? To get the money to spend on this thing that I might not like. That's kind of terrifying, right? Because it's a lot of money. I've just done it so many times that it's dulled, right? The harshness of that that thing is dulled now from having done it so many times. But each one of these ended up working well. I connected with each of them and loved them all for different reasons so much after having handled them that I was like, okay, I spent too much on this, but it's here now and I like it. And then as time goes on, you just kind of forget. Like each of these knives, I don't think of this stuff collectively as a certain amount of money spent anymore. They're just objects that bring me joy now. Why am I telling you guys this? I don't know that there's really this is just something that happens. There's not really, there's not like a lesson here. When you buy a knife, no matter what it is, no matter how much everybody else loves it, no matter how good a deal everybody says it is, there's a chance that you'll get it and go, I wouldn't pay half for this because of how you emotionally and mentally and physically interact with it. It sounds silly because it's a knife, right? But all of the sense, everything, your whole being is interacting with this thing, right? And that's that initial kind of, there's a big part of you deciding whether or not you love it the first time that you handle it. Sometimes you have to go out and use it and kind of carry it, and then you're like, oh, it's growing on me, right? But that's when all of this goes out the window. I know that I've talked about this before, sense of value going out the window, because it's different for all of us, right? Some things, there are some knives out there, that are like unanimously considered like overpriced. Like for example, the James brand, the Barnes. Everybody. That was an example of a knife that was, even after handling it, I was like, I would not pay an extra $200. I think this is a $400 knife and they want $600 for it. I would not pay an additional $200 for this. There are plenty of people who went ahead and bought that knife for $600 and love it. They're just like, I don't care that it's $600. I love this. It doesn't matter if every single person on the planet thinks that this is overpriced. It brings me enough joy that the sting of spending that much money went away, right? Especially with time. So that's going to be the case. Sometimes you're going to win. Sometimes you're going to lose, right? Sometimes it's just going to go, you're going to go, yep, this feels like right on the money, like I think the right on the money knife is always, it for such a long time for me has been the Ritter Hogue, right? This honestly, I think I think they probably could charge more. I don't want them to do that, but this is a great knife, and they want like 160 for it. M390 and G10, and build quality is great, and it's made in the USA. Yeah, it's a right on the money knife, but everything else is going to be more or less for people, which just pulls me back to the point that I make a lot of the time. I know that a lot of us get joy from the whole like sharing it on social media. Not everybody is like this. Some people just, it's private, it's for them at 100%, and they like to interact with the community, but it's not about, they don't love knives more or less just because other people love them more or less, right? That's just their own thing. But some of us, you know, I can't lie. Sometimes when I put like a knife that I really, really love, if I put it up on Instagram, well, for example, the Varga Blades VBR, which I think is a great deal. I put that up on Instagram, and tons of people interacted with it and were like, oh, this is so cool. And I was like, I know. And it made me love it even more. Sometimes that happens, right? But truthfully, there are some knives like the XM24. I love this thing so much, right? Literally every person on the planet could be like, that is the most ridiculously overpriced knife, and you are stupid for loving it and owning it. It would not matter to me. I like the 24 way too much. And you know, it's just that it's just there for me, you know. So yeah, a lot of you guys are sitting here going, what did I just sit here and watch for 20 minutes? He's supposed to conclude with something that I can take away from it. There's not really, you know, it's just the knife world. Sometimes knives are too much money, and sometimes they bum us out, and sometimes they're too much money, and sometimes and they make us happy, right? Or there's a million different ways that you could go about this, but time will fix the negative. You know, if you feel the sting of paying too much money, time will eventually fix that. And with the more not, if you're really in this as a collector and enthusiast, right, your path will, you know, what's an inevitability is that you're going to acquire more knives. And as you acquire more knives, you get better at picking out the stuff that you know is a good value and that's going to bring you joy, or that stuff that maybe is a little overpriced, but it's still going to bring you joy and you're going to feel good about it, right? So it's always shaky in the beginning, and you kind of have to make these types of mistakes in order to progress and get the most out of the hobby. That's a good way to come to some type of conclusion, right? This is more of the same. It's 21 minutes of me just rambling on about what I'm thinking about. In any case, I hope that you guys got something out of this. I hope that you were at least mildly entertained. If you were, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that metal complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.